Well, I appreciate you guys having me. I know this is my competitor's home, and so I know that a lot of you guys are pretty close to him. But I appreciate wanting to hear about me and know who I am and hear my story. I'm an American dream story. I grew up wonderfully middle class. My father's here. He was an executive in businesses for years, but he was a Marine, a recon Marine in Vietnam, 78, 79, or 68, 69. And he's a Bronze Star, Purple Heart, fantastic guy. He's from Southern Missouri, Springfield. I was born in Springfield, Missouri as well. We're many generations in Springfield. Before that, our family was from Tennessee, fought in the Civil War for the Confederates. And when we lost, it was bad news in Tennessee, and so the family moved to Southern Missouri to get a restart. My parents met there in Springfield. My mother was at a small college called Evangel College in Springfield. She was from a ranching family in Nebraska. So my grandfather was a cattle rancher in Valentine, Nebraska, which is northern Nebraska. He ran about 400 head of cattle on 5,000 acres of the Sandhills, which tells you how barren the Sandhills are. If you got 5,000 acres, you can only run 400 head of cattle. But he built a beautiful life. My mom grew up in the middle of nowhere and always just wanted to get to the city. And so that, for her, Springfield, Missouri was the big city. And my parents met there, and I was born there. When I was young, we moved to Iowa. My dad ran a meat packing plant for Armor Meats in Iowa. And Armor Meats was owned by Dial Soap, back when it was Armor Dial. And Dial Soap was based in Phoenix, Arizona. And so when I was 6, we moved to Phoenix. I grew up right where Scottsdale, Phoenix, and Paradise Valley all came together. Interesting note, years later when I got to be friends with Dan Cathy, I told him, I said, when I was growing up, there was a Chick-fil-A at the Paradise Valley Mall, which was right by my house. I could walk to it. And I think it was the only Chick-fil-A in all of Arizona. And he said, yeah, one of my relatives had a house in Paradise Valley, so we built one Chick-fil-A in Paradise Valley Mall. It was one of my favorite things as a kid to go to the mall, and we'd walk in, and on the right was McDonald's, and then the next door was Chick-fil-A. And that was back when they'd hand out the chicken nuggets. And the chicken nuggets were really like my only memory of Chick-fil-A. I didn't even really even process it was Chick-fil-A until years and years later, and I thought, why was there that Chick-fil-A? And then it was Dan who told me that story. Anyway, I always wanted to do more or aspire to more than I grew up with, and I went into finance young. And when I was 26, I started doing real estate deals, land deals, and then I went back and did a master's degree at USC in real estate development. And I joined a group that was buying apartments. A guy who was a Harvard MBA had been buying apartments, and he needed a young partner. And I joined him, and we went out and bought 4,500 apartments in the early 2000s. And that was the first time I came to Georgia. It was around 2003. And I got to know it well on the real estate side. When Lehman Brothers failed in 2008, I then partnered with 2 wealthy families in Beverly Hills, and they gave me $5 million. We raised another $45 million from their friends and family. I took that money to New York, and I learned this business from the Harvard MBA. And I took that money to New York, and I got another $350 million of equity. And we levered that about 60%, and in 2010, 11, 12, 13, we bought $1 billion of apartments. It was about 8,000 apartments. And they were all in the South, 4,000 in Atlanta and 4,000 in the surrounding cities, Raleigh, Nashville, Chattanooga, Savannah. And by the end of 2013, I was in the South 3 weeks out of the month. And so I decided that I didn't want to live out of a hotel. And so I moved to Georgia. I bought a farm in Social Circle. And that was the same year, 2014, that Dan Cathy opened Pinewood Studios in Fayetteville. Now, I had no idea why he opened a movie studio in Fayetteville, but I learned a lot about the tax credit. And then I realized, that's why they came here. And Marvel had moved in, and they were thriving. Now, around this time, it became hard for me to buy apartments because everything had shifted. Institutions had come back into the real estate market, and I wasn't able to buy things cheap anymore. And I started thinking about other things to do. and I watched that Marvel thriving down there in Fayetteville, and I thought, why did he build that movie studio in Fayetteville, Georgia? That seems like it's in the middle of nowhere. And then I found out Dan was from Fayetteville, and I realized that there was no real estate strategy. It was just a rich guy doing something he wanted, which is beautiful. That's America. But there's a very basic real estate principle that says if you have a use that works in a bad location, it's going to work a lot better in a good location. And on that very basic thesis, I built a massive movie studio here in Georgia on the south side of Atlanta in DeKalb County called Black Hall Studios. 850,000 square feet on 100 acres. I leased it to Disney, Sony, Warner Brothers, HBO, Netflix, Paramount. Movies you might know that were made there. Jumanji's, the ones with The Rock. Jungle Cruise, also with The Rock. Venom with Tom Hardy. Tomorrow War with Chris Pratt. Godzilla, King of Monsters. Just, big movies. And we had a great run. I started to build 2 more in London and 1 in LA, and then I sold all that to private equity in 2021. Now, this is where the story takes a turn and why I'm standing in front of you. Because part of my movie studio development, I bought a bunch of other land around that area, and when I sold my studio, the guys who I sold it to wouldn't pay me for the other land, so I kept it. Now, this 40-acre piece of property was a 40-acre piece that I had swapped 53 acres with DeKalb County for this 40-acre piece of property. And it happened to sit next to Cop City. And I don't know if you remember Cop City, but it was the old police training, or the old prison farm for the city of Atlanta on the south side, and they wanted to turn it into a police training facility. Now, Antifa didn't like that. And Antifa moved in and started protesting Cop City. And they had a hard time because Cop City, owned by the city of Atlanta, even though it was in DeKalb County, the city of Atlanta sent their police. They sent the Atlanta PD to patrol that 300 acres. Well, my land next door wasn't being patrolled by the Atlanta PD. I was at the mercy of DeKalb sheriffs. Now, Antifa moved on my land. I called the cops. I said, hey, I got trespassers. I need you to come remove them. And so the sheriffs came over, and I went with the sheriffs out to this property. And when we got there, 50 Antifas came out of the woods in masks with full beer bottles and rocks. And I thought, oh man, this is going to get good. These cops are going to take it to these guys. And as they came forward, the sheriff started backing up. And I turned and I said, what are you guys doing? These guys, you got to get these guys off my land. They said, well, we've been told we can't escalate the situation. And I thought to myself, what world am I living in? And I watched the cops back up and get in their cars, and then the Antifas went ahead and burned my equipment. They burned a truck of mine, they burned a trailer. Later they burned more equipment. And so not only were they trespassers, but they were vandals. The next day I went and met with the CEO of DeKalb County, Michael Thurman. I told him, I said, Michael, you got to get these people off my land. He said, there's nothing I can do. I said, what do you mean there's nothing you can do? He said, well, these people are known to be violent. I won't escalate the situation. I'm not going to have blood on my hands. I said, I don't really think that's your choice. You're the law enforcement. Unless you're going to give me some special dispensation to go clear this land myself, which I'd gladly do. Unless you can do that, I need you to get these people off my land. He said, not going to do it. These Antifas occupied my land for 18 months. 18 months I couldn't get them off the land. Now, in the meantime, they sued me. I'm still in a lawsuit with them 5.5 years later. They threatened me. They threatened my wife. They started writing hit piece articles calling me a racist anti-Semite. Anything they could do to cut me off at the knees, these people would do. They did not care. They came to our house. They spray painted our house. And I couldn't get anybody to listen. I couldn't get anybody in DeKalb County to care. And as I started to go to the Golden Dome and beg, I found out that the career politicians didn't have the backbone for it. They didn't want to have a mess. They just want everybody to get along because they like their jobs. I said, I got a big problem. Like, they're not respecting my land use rights. Talk to DeKalb County. Now, after 18 months, Brian Kemp came to my rescue, and Burt Jones. Burt was a lieutenant governor at the time. And they both together sent the state troopers. State troopers came out to my land. They cleared it of Antifas. They arrested 60 people for domestic terrorism. You know how many of those have been prosecuted to this point? 0. Now, I talked to Chris Carr about this for years. I'm scheduled to be the lead witness in 60 domestic terrorism trials. But Fulton County won't push it forward. This is what the world looks like if it's run by Democrats. It looks like DeKalb County.
Amen.
It looks like where you can't get justice. It looks like where you can't own land. You can't have rights on your land. You can't get anybody to enforce the law. It looks like you go to court. You can't get anything done in court because the judges are too far left, and the lawyers that are playing ball all too far left. Everything falls apart. So when I went through all this, I was so frustrated that we live in a country that this kind of stuff is happening. I realized that if we don't get really, really tough, like radically tough against these leftist commies, they will take over this country. And we will live in a place that we don't even recognize anymore. And our children will say, I thought you told me America was free and beautiful. We'll say it was. Sorry about that. I was too busy chasing the American dream to care about politics. I let them take over every bureaucracy. I let them take over the courts. I let them take over the government. I let them take over the education system. But we can't do that. We have to get up and punch them in the face. And so that's what I'm doing. Now, I do want to address one thing, which is this race has become very, very contentious, as all of you probably know here being in Athens. And it's not the way it really should be. I mean, really, everybody should just be able to run on the merits, run on the truth, let the voters decide who they think their best representative will be. But in this instance, I know my competitor is young. He really, really wants this job. He's been a career politician, and he's really frustrated by the idea that he wouldn't get to get this promotion. But he handled this all wrong. I'm a known entity in the state of Georgia. Everybody knows I'm a conservative. Everybody in the GOP at the center of this state knew I was a hugely supportive conservative. I'm a solid citizen American. But that's not how Young Gaines treated this. He immediately started trying to intimidate my wife, his crew. He immediately made a website, Malibu Millsap. He's a liberal from California. He knows that's not true. That's all lies. Then he started sending out mailers, all lies. And so what am I going to do? I'm going to fight back. And so I've attacked him where he's weak, just like he's tried to lie about me, which is crazy and inappropriate. We need to fight together as Republicans, because that's the way that we beat the left. The left is our enemy. The right is not our enemy. Anyway, with that, I appreciate the time. If you guys have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. Yeah.
Okay. Take a couple of questions. Remember our rule? It's a question. It's not a diatribe. Okay. Who's got a question? Mr. Millsap. Nobody? Nobody's got a question?
Question.
Yeah.
John.
You get into Congress, what's the first thing that you're gonna try to do?
Listen, the way that we destroy the left in this country is to crush their flywheel of fraud. And the way we crush their flywheel of fraud is, I don't believe these guys know how to make a dollar. I don't believe they're entrepreneurs. I don't believe they have the American spirit. They're not can-do Americans. So we have to shut down all of their waste, fraud, and abuse. We saw some of that with President Trump and Elon Musk with USAID, which I loved. I was ecstatic when they shut down USAID. But the way that we have to do it is you start with illegal immigration, because they abuse all the illegal immigrants to stuff these cities, these sanctuary cities, get inappropriate amounts of voting. Then they get inappropriate levels of representation. They go to Washington, they vote in all of these welfare programs, whether it's child care welfare or senior welfare. But all of these are fraudulent programs. All of these are being abused. They're stealing money everywhere they go. And so the number one way to fight against these people is to go fight all those welfare programs, starting with getting all the illegal immigrants out, and then going through systematically and saying, we're going to shut down this welfare, shut down this welfare, shut down. That's how we crush them. Now, in our own district, we need more organization, because, I've been hard on Athens, because I think Athens should be the crown jewel of District 10. This city, the fact that it is de facto sanctuary is just ridiculous. When you look at the rest of District 10, that is 75% Republican, maybe 80 when you take out the Athens. I think District 10 needs to be organized in a way that we all work together, that these 20 counties have an identity and strength, that we can come back and put a lot of pressure on the Athens leadership that has let this city go into disrepair that in a completely irresponsible way.
Amen.
Next? Nope, you've already had one with screws. Yeah, but we gotta give others. Anybody else? Yes?
Are we gonna have another financial crisis because of private credit, the problem with private credit and dark money? And what about all these people that are buying up rows and rows of homes, private equity people?
Well, I know a lot about the private equity guys, and what I'll tell you is their primary motive is to make money. So right now, when it comes to the home side, they've been vacuuming up homes largely because there weren't other buyers, and they just came in and said, I can rent these and rent them like apartments. We need to shift that movement because our young people, and I have a bunch of young people who work for me, they're having a hard time buying homes. And we need to systematically put them in a place where they can start young families, start having kids, really settle into an American dream, the chasing of happiness. I don't believe right now we're in a bad situation economically. If we just clean up the waste, fraud, and abuse, the billions and billions of dollars that be freed inside of the federal government to probably just come back to us as taxes we don't have to pay would be an incredible boost to the economy. Now, right now, one of the biggest risks, obviously, is the energy prices that have happened from the war in Iran. I personally think that what Trump has done in Venezuela and what he's doing now in Iran could turn out to be an incredible stroke of genius in our ability to contain China for another 50 to 75 years, because we're shutting down their primary sources of cheap energy. And as long as he can close up Iran with cleanliness, I think it might turn out to be one of the most important things he did as a president.
You have to work with 400 and some odd other congressional people. Do you think you have the ability to work with them and achieve President Trump's executive orders, especially with the things we don't like to talk about, like election integrity and citizenship for people who vote?
Well, I mean, we have to get to a place in this country where people believe in the elections and believe that it's one citizen, one vote, and it's auditable, and there's not even a debate about whether or not an election is fair. It's ridiculous that we even are worried about whether our elections are fair, and we could fix that pretty easily. But right now, what we're seeing is that President Trump is having to fight his own party. They're not willing to take the hard line stances that Trump needs them to take. And a lot of that goes back to the fact that we have a lot of politicians right now who are career politicians that aren't willing to take risks, and we need to change that in this country, because we need to go back to a world where the entrepreneurs, the regular citizens who had other careers, who are 50, 60 years old, who can go and sit in those seats and make sure mischief isn't happening, because right now too many people are sitting in those seats and they're using them for mischief. They're using them to get wealthy. So the answer is we got to be hard on the guys that aren't doing Trump's work, or at least in the spirit, because even when Trump's gone, we're going to have to continue in the spirit of cutting down the waste, fraud, and abuse, really focusing on Americanism. So while you have to work with them, you also have to be hard on the guys that are too weak. And we need to start recruiting. One of the reasons why it's important for it to send me to go sit in this seat is I can recruit a bunch of other guys like me. A bunch of other guys that have already made money and other things. I can show them the path. I can teach them how to be congressmen as a side job, as a hobby, the way it should be, the way it was for our forefathers. And we can get back to a world where being in Congress or being a senator is a way to protect the country, so that the rest of us, all of us, can go chase happiness, build businesses, do all these beautiful things, and get out of the business of government. The government is not our solution. The government is actually one of our major problems in this country.
My turn.
Yeah.
Last question. I'm going to take privilege on this one, okay? Joan and I got involved in the Republican Party in Clark County in 2012. Mm-hmm. For the last 8 years, I've been chairman of the Republican Party. Where have you been?
Yeah.
I mean, have you worked in a local county politics and social circle or
Yeah.
California or anything?
Yeah, definitely not California. I live in social circle. When it comes to politics, I've been a donor, but like many people, there's not a lot of people who come to GOP meetings, and I think that needs to change too. But I don't think we're doing a good job of recruiting well, getting the message out, actually teaching people how to be more active local citizens. And I think we need to do that. But it starts with guys like me saying, hey, I'll do it. And when guys like me show up and say, I'll do it, you should go, yes, we need guys like you because you're capable. You've already proven yourself. You're very sophisticated. Come and help us, as that's what I'm trying to do now.
Thank you.
Thank you.